Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and my cat just jumped on my balls. So it's a great start. It's a great start to this episode, the final episode of our October Spooky Subject series. I don't know why I told you that. That is probably not necessary. Talking about demons and people who claimed that they were possessed by demons. I said it a little bit last week. This is the one subject where, like, if you really believe in it, you really believe in it, right? Like, it's not like a passing, like, yeah, it'd be cool if aliens were real. But, like, it's like, no, man, don't mess with demons, all right? Like, I'm not even going to listen to this episode in a dark room or anything. I'm going to have all the lights on around me, not going to do anything that's going to invite anything in. And even right now, if you really believe in it, you're probably like, dude, your very lackadaisical attitude towards this is very concerning, and you're going to invite something into your house, and it's going to really mess you up. And honestly, whatever. I don't care. I need some excitement in my life. Anyway, talking about 3 stories today of some people who had experiences with demons. We were looking at the stories of Michael Taylor, Arne Cheyenne Johnson, and our first story after the fancy music of Elizabeth Knapp. Going all the way back to the 1600s with Elizabeth Knapp, who was a farmer's daughter and a servant working in the home of Samuel Willard, a well-known Puritan preacher in Groton, Massachusetts. On October 30th, 1671, the 16-year-old Knapp started showing signs of demonic possession, which was a huge problem in Puritan colonial Massachusetts, and an even bigger problem since she was the servant of a Puritan preacher and living in his home. Knapp began complaining of pain throughout her entire body, oftentimes grabbing at various body parts and also screaming that she was being strangled. And, like, here's the thing. I don't understand that, because if you're being strangled, it's really hard to properly articulate that you are being strangled, much less scream it, right? Like, not that I know from experience, I haven't strangled anybody, but I'm just guessing that if you're strangling someone, all the noise they're going to be able to make is more like they're not going to be like, I'm being strangled. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. So I don't know, man. Anyway, when Knapp wasn't crying out in pain, she experienced wild mood swings that ranged from hysterical laughter to inconsolable weeping. She also hallucinated and claimed to see 2 people walking around her room, along with another man that was just floating above her bed, which, horrifying, right? But also, it just sounds like she's bipolar. And maybe also, not to be crude, not to be, not to just pick the low-hanging fruit, but I don't know, man. How much of this is just maybe she had a bad period? That's a reasonable question to ask, all right? But because I'm a white dude, it seems wrong of me to even point that out, all right? This is a girl's podcast. If this is a woman hosting this show and she points it out, you go, queen. You just destroy the patriarchy or whatever. I don't know. I'm in a mood today. I shouldn't be recording, but Anyway, where are we at? When she wasn't hallucinating, she was writhing around on the floor. At one point, she just tried to throw herself into a fire. It took as many as 4 people to fully restrain her, and she often yelled out, "Money, money, sin, misery, misery," during her fits. And so, look, 1670s, I get how people would say, yeah, this is definitely a demon. Like, there's literally no other explanation for this. Despite all of that, though, to his credit, Samuel Willard decided to try to take a logical, scientific approach to Knapp's issues rather than the standard Puritan practice of assuming that everyone with a strange illness was possessed by the devil. Willard started by calling in a doctor to try to alleviate the fits and convulsions, but no doctor could eliminate any of the symptoms. So after 3 days, Willard gave up all of that and claimed that Knapp had been possessed by a demon. So on November 2nd, Knapp finally confessed that she had been meeting with the devil for the last 3 years out in the woods in Massachusetts. The devil had offered her money, youth, an easy life, and the ability to see the entire world. The devil then presented her a book of blood covenants that had been signed by other women, which she then also signed. Sure. On November 28th, she had a fit, a convulsion, an episode that lasted for 2 full days. And when it ended, Knapp was left completely immobilized until December 8th. At that point, she confessed that she had been assaulted by the devil until she made a pact with him and, quote, allowed him into her bed, which obviously means that she was taking a ride on that satanic baloney pony, just getting it on with the devil. And how great of a term is baloney pony? Oh, man, I forgot about that one. Not gonna lie. And that, I'm so glad I brought that back. Because that, I need to use that more in my daily lexicon. That's great. Anyway, aside from that, for the rest of the month, Knapp continued to have violent fits. She would speak in a deep, gravelly voice and make various animal sounds. At one point, allegedly, the devil spoke through Knapp and accused Willard of being a rogue minister, whatever that means. Unfortunately, Willard's journal entries about Knapp stopped after January 1672 because that's where we get the source material for Elizabeth Knapp's stories. Some records indicate that she actually eventually married a man named Samuel Scripture and lived out the rest of her life as a good Puritan mother. It's entirely possible that Willard prayed the devil away or just readjusted Knapp to cope with living as a possessed person, since the Puritans really just saw possession as a gateway to witchcraft rather than the two kind of being one and the same. Maybe he performed an exorcism and maybe cast the demon out. Maybe everything just kind of stopped. We don't know. Historians think obviously that she was faking all of it, mostly because servants at that time were treated like second-class citizens. And so Knapp, thinking that if she faked a demonic possession, it would allow her to stop working as a servant, and yeah, kind of did. On top of that, once she had been quote-unquote cured, being a demon possession survivor actually gave her a higher social status in the Puritan community. And so, you know, like the Puritans, especially, like this is even before the Salem witch trials, like they're all concerned about devils and witches and all that. And so, you know, if you fake being possessed by a demon long enough, and to her credit, she really, really spread this out. I mean, over a month, right? 2 months, really, maybe even 3. And she kept it up. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh my goodness, guys, I'm cured. And then everyone's like, oh man, this woman's a miracle. And she's royalty, basically. And so that's probably what happened. She is probably faking it just to get a better life. Our next story here is of Michael Taylor, who was a butcher living in Ossett, a small town south of Leeds in northern England. He was an active member in a Christian fellowship group that his wife had started, but at the same time, he was also having an affair with the lay leader of the group, Marie Robinson. One day, though, Michael realized that he had an evil presence living within him and actually ended up attacking the woman he was having an affair with, who fortunately fought him off and was relatively unharmed. Although the Christian fellowship group formally forgave him at the next meeting, Michael's behavior and actions around the group and in town became more erratic. The local priest eventually called in other priests who had experience with demons and prepared to conduct an exorcism. So on October 5th, 1974, Anglican priest Father Peter Vincent and Methodist clergyman Reverend Raymond Smith met Michael Taylor at St. Thomas's Church in Gobber, a small town about 10 miles south of Ossett. And over the course of the night of October 5th, the priests believe that they had successfully cast out at least 40 demons, including those who dabbled in incest and bestiality. Which, like, what's that got to be like, right? Like, imagine that, like, getting possessed by a demon is like catching COVID or something, right? Like, you're going to get it, right? You know, like, there's only so much you can do. Like, if you haven't gotten COVID yet, you're going to get it, right? But, like, COVID is also just different for everybody. And so, like, getting possessed by a demon apparently is different from everybody. So, like, maybe some people get possessed by a demon who is just actually just really philanthropic. And, like, sure, maybe that demon, donates to, like, African warlords who, castrate women or something. But, like, maybe, like, I say it's relatively harmless, right? Like you're not actively, never mind. It's still bad. But, like, also maybe you get possessed by a demon who's, like, addicted to McDonald's. Like, who's hurting who really there? But then also, just like COVID can kill people versus it being just like a little cold for others. What if you get possessed by a demon that was all about bestiality, right? And all of a sudden you're just like, come here, kitty, and just jamming that thing on there, right? That would be nuts. That's a crazy world to live in if that's what really happened. Thank goodness it's not real. And I don't know why my mind went there, but it did. By the next morning, the exhausted priests let Michael go home, even though they believed that 3 demons of insanity, murder, and violence still lived inside of him. And to their expectation, then later that day, Michael ended up attacking his wife and literally ripped her eyes and tongue out of her face and nearly tore the skin off of her entire head. Whoa. So, like, I get why they think he's probably possessed by a demon, because that's pretty wild. Because here's the thing. That makes sense. Insanity. They thought the demons of insanity, murder, and violence were there. And that's exactly what he did. Right. And to make things worse, he did strangle their poodle to death, which is sad. To me, that's the sadder part of this story. I don't know why. I've said this before. I am so jaded and apathetic to people getting killed on this show. But when an animal dies, when a pet dies, come on. Why? What do you gotta do that to? Why you gotta kill the puppy? He is mean. Anyway, police did find Michael a few minutes later roaming the streets, completely naked and covered in blood, as the possessed are wont to do. Shockingly here, however, at the murder trial, from where he murdered his wife and ripped her eyeballs out of her head, he was acquitted on the grounds of insanity and was instead sent to a mental hospital for 2 years, followed by another 2-year stay in prison. And then, for no apparent reason, English authorities just let him go. They released this maniac, this demon-possessed, quote-unquote, maniac, out into the public. A guy who may or may not have been under the influence of demons ripped his wife's eyeballs out of her head. Like, not even just, like, choked her to death. Ripped her eyeballs out of her head. And they let him go. They're like, yeah, he's fine. It was the demons. The demons seemed like they're in remission or something. I guess like cancer. Over the next 3 decades, Michael tried to kill himself 4 times and failed. In 2005, he was arrested for molesting a teenage girl and was then sent back to prison. While back in prison, he began resembling the same sort of behavior that he had exhibited just before he killed his wife. And authorities noted that and then sent him off to a mental hospital for psychiatric treatment. And by all accounts, no one has heard anything from him since. So who knows? They probably released him again. Or maybe he's dead. I don't know. Our final story here is of Arne Cheyenne Johnson, which began when he and his 11-year-old stepson, David Glatzel, went out to one of Johnson's rental properties in Brookfield, Connecticut, that they had just purchased, to start cleaning it up, getting ready to flip it, and start renting it out. The 11-year-old Glatzel, as he was cleaning things up, moving brush and debris and all that, he began seeing this creepy old man who would come up to him and just push him and intimidate him and, like, just really creeping him out and scaring him. And he would go back to Johnson, who thought that David was making all of this up as an excuse to just get out of cleaning. But David kept providing like increasingly bizarre details of each encounter. David was telling Arne that the man threatened to harm the family if they moved into the house. He also appeared as a demonic beast, spoke in Latin, threatened to steal David's soul. And like Arne had like heard strange noises coming from the attic, but he didn't really bother to investigate those. And he really just thought that David's just being like this spoiled little 11-year-old and just trying to think of like the most insane thing that he can possibly think of to try to get out of doing all of this work. Meanwhile, over the course of the next few weeks, David started experiencing night terrors and then began developing like these unexplainable cuts and bruises all over his body. Arne and then David's mother, Debbie, even saw David get choked out and assaulted by some sort of invisible force, but they just kind of brushed it off as like hormonal preteen problems. Like they thought, he's going through puberty. His hormones are all out of whack. Just, he'll get through it. And I get it. It's very logical. When he began reciting passages from the Bible and the book Paradise Lost, which was not his MO, Arne and Debbie called Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous self-proclaimed demonology experts, to come and look at their son. After Lorraine claimed to see a cloud of black mist appear next to David, she ordered a series of exorcisms to get this out. During the 3 exorcisms, David allegedly levitated, stopped breathing, and then started predicting the future, which included Arne murdering everyone. The Warrens decided to get the police involved, who obviously decided that all of this was very silly and didn't do anything about it. Arne, however, at this point, he's become convinced that David is possessed by some demons and even asked one of the demons that was living inside David to leave him and come possess him instead, which is admirable, but also pretty stupid. All right, let's pretend for a second that this is all real. And you're probably like, yeah, this is definitely real. What are you talking about? Pretend. This is real life. Why would you do that? Like, again, we saw in the last story, if demons are, labeled and categorized based on like what they love to do, why are you going to just invite a random demon to come out of this little kid and into you, not knowing what it's capable of? All of a sudden you're just a pedophile now because that's what the demon's into, or you're trying to bang your sister because the demon's into that. Like, no, like it's not even your kid either, by the way, it's a step kid. So like, sure, admirable. Yes. Took over that lease and is going to raise this kid for the rest of its life. But why would you do that? It's silly. It's a very silly thing to do. A few days later, Arne and David, like things had kind of calmed down. They returned to the rental house to check out a well that David said was the demon's home. The Warrens heard about this plan and told Arne it was a bad idea, but he didn't listen because why would he? Arne then allegedly encountered this demon in the well, but nothing really extraordinary happened. He just like, yeah, I saw him. It was cool. We had a chat, whatever. I don't know. Eventually, Arne and Debbie moved into a new home in Brookfield that was owned by Alan Bono, who also had hired Debbie as a dog groomer. A few days later, Arne began exhibiting the same strange behavior that David had been while he was possessed and while the Warrens were trying to exorcise him. He would fall into trances. He would start growling. And Debbie realized, like, oh, man, remember that time you asked that demon to come out of David and into you? Yeah, you're pretty possessed now, bro. So on February 16th, 1981, Arne called in sick at work and spent the day at the kennel where Debbie was working as a dog groomer. Alan Bono, their new landlord and Debbie's boss, offered to take the couple to lunch, where for some reason Bono proceeded to get just super drunk. And by the late afternoon, back at the kennel, Bono was making everyone nervous because he was not a fun drunk. He was an angry drunk. And he was just getting more belligerent. And so Debbie tried to usher everyone out of the room. And when she did that, Bono grabbed Mary, who was Debbie's 9-year-old cousin, and started to just leave with her. Maybe Bono's got the pedophile demon inside of him. That's a good excuse, right? Officer, I'm possessed by a pedophile demon. I did not molest that boy. It was a demon inside of me. All right. The demon molested that boy, not me. No, not me. I'm a good person. As evidenced by the fact that I got possessed by a demon. Good people. Like, terrible people don't get possessed by a demon. All right, terrible. But I'm a good person. All right, I go to church, and those are the people that get possessed by demons. And this demon that possessed me just was super into pedophilia and made me molest them. I swear to God, that's totally what happened, bro. And oh God. Anyway, I told you I was in a mood today. So he tries to leave with this 9-year-old girl. And at that point, Arne quickly stepped in, tried to fight him, but Debbie kind of put herself in between the two men to try to break things up. But at this point, Arne has activated full demon mode, right? He's growling at this guy, which is weird. It's not how you like bow up to a dude, right? Like, two dudes fighting, it's more like, yeah, you better hold me back, bro. You better hold me back. You don't want none of this. You don't do none of this. What are you going to do? Yeah, you can. No, somebody better hold me back. I'll beat this. But no, like, no, he's just growling at this guy. Arne then pulled out his pocket knife and stabbed Bono 5 times in his chest with one wound, actually, and not even just stabbing, but like getting in there and then like rooting around in there with the pocket knife. One of the wounds ran from Bono's stomach up to his heart. And I think killed him. Pretty sure he did. Like, you can't just stab someone in the stomach, run it up to his heart, and not kill him, right? Anyway, Arne was arrested a few minutes later, because of course. Upon hearing the news of this, Lorraine Warren informed the Brookfield police that Arne had been possessed by a demon at the time of the murder. So yeah, he did kill him, which brought all sorts of extra media attention to this case. Warren was already promising a book and a movie deal about this story, which made it worse. Which is like, this is like one of those things about the Warrens that like kind of makes me believe that like they're just playing into people's fears. Like, if they really thought that people were possessed by demons and all this stuff was real, they wouldn't then be trying to capitalize on these stories and spin them to try to make a ton of money with book deals and movie deals and try to get a cut of that, right? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not, maybe I'm a good person and not a complete dickhead who tries to take advantage of people. Anyway, Arne's lawyer, Martin Manella, flew in exorcism specialists from Europe and even threatened to involve the original priest from David's exorcisms if they refused to cooperate, because at this point in the trial, though, everyone thought that a man was possessed by a demon was the most logical scenario in all of this. The trial began 8 months later with Arne's lawyer submitting a not guilty plea by reason of possession, not by reason of insanity, but by reason of possession, which I don't even think is an official legal move. Judge Robert Callahan, the only person with any sort of common sense in this story, immediately rejected it. Arne was convicted of first-degree manslaughter 3 days later and was given a 10 to 20-year prison sentence. However, he was released after serving only 5 years. By all accounts, everything's fine now. Just everything's fine. And no one's heard from him since. However, the story has been adapted. The Warrens got their book and movie deal from it. The David Glatzel and his brother Carl in 2006 ended up suing the authors and the book publishers of the book that was published called The Devil in Connecticut. They sued them for libel, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and right to privacy. Carl also claimed that the book alleged that he committed criminal and abusive acts against his family and brothers, which wasn't even like part of the main story. He also said that the possession story and all of that was just this hoax, kind of perpetuated by Ed and Lorraine Warren to exploit the family of their mental illness and all of that, because they didn't even believe in any of the supernatural stuff. He also asserted that the Warrens told him that they should do this because it would make them millionaires and it would also help get Arne Johnson out of jail. Whatever. The story was also turned into a 2021 movie called The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. And that is the end of today's stories. All right. The second part of our stories about some demons in the books. If you wanted to actually go back and listen to part 1, that is episode number 84. But if you really believe in demons and are super creeped out by it, you're probably not going to. But it's a good episode. Not gonna lie, there's pretty good stories in that one, but whatever. Let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, honestly, like if you just want to get out of something, just pretend you're possessed by a demon. People take that seriously. And at least in the case of Elizabeth Knapp, you'll actually become a more revered member of society for it. So who knows? Number 2, Michael Taylor, possessed by over 40 demons, but then there were 3 that were left inside of him. And then he ripped his wife's eyeballs out and pretty much scalped her. That's nuts. So sure. And then number 3, Ed and Lorraine Warren, actual demonology people or just grifters who like to take advantage of people and exploit them and mental illness for thoughts about demons and such. Who knows? They're both dead now, so who cares? Next week on Our Weird World, continuing a tradition that I think I started on accident. I think at some point, either the first or second year that I was doing this show, I incorrectly said that next week is like celebrating D-Day or Pearl Harbor Day or something. I don't know, man. It's also kind of like Veterans Day week almost, or like pre-veteran. Anyway, either way, it seems like the first episode after the October Halloween themed episodes is always about war. And so we're going to keep doing that with some lesser known war stories. We're going to look at the Battle of Karen Seabees, St. Clair's defeat, the Sandbar fight, and the story of David Fagan. And so just some various stories from various eras of wars, and they're all silly or just kind of interesting or just whatever. I don't know. You get it. It's the nature of the show. It's stuff you haven't heard before. And that's why we're doing it. So you can get more educated about history because you like it. And anyway, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. This is a terrible show. Why are you even listening? Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening, I guess. Tell all your friends and keep it weird. Hey, well, there ain't no changing how it all wound up. She took off flying in a cloud of dust. Now, I ain't saying that it don't hurt, but I got a 90 proof way to make it work. Hey, I sure do miss her and what we had, but there ain't no future in looking back. So I keep on rolling and moving on. I hope she comes back, but if she don't, I'll be drinking every drink 7 nights a week all over this town, doing that thing I do, running from the truth. Bartender, one more round. Party mode, party mode, party mode. That's how it goes, how it goes, how it goes. Neon lights, honky tonks till they close. Party mode, party mode, party mode.